On your Wednesday episode, the Toronto Raptors are in the rumor mill once again. Could they be the mystery team for Damian Lillard? We have our doubts, but we'll discuss. Plus, we get into the players we're most excited to watch on the Raptors this season. It's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, September the 20th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I'm going into my 10th season covering the Raptors on various platforms. You can follow my work over on Twitter, X, whatever the hell we're calling it, while it's still not paywalled, I guess. We'll figure it out from there. But for now, at Woodley Sean over there. The show is also on Twitter at Locked On Raptors. We're on Instagram, same handle. And of course, the Locked On Raptors Discord server is the place to be. The link is in the description. Come hang out. It seems as though we're all going to be out of luck when it comes to a free platform on which to talk about basketball this coming season. But Discord's free, and the link is in the description of the show. As always, come hang out. Would love to see you in there. Talking ball, talking Blue Jays, who we're believing in again, I suppose. Talking movies, talking video games, fantasy basketball. It's all going on in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. As a reminder as well, you can find the show for free on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube, and we appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day. All right, today's show is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics to treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. Let's get to it. We're bringing in a lovely guest today. Returning to the show, the editor-in-chief of Raptors HQ. It is Chelsea Leite, who is here to talk about Damian Lillard, apparently. That was a little wrinkle thrown into our plans for the show. We have more fun stuff talking about dudes we're excited to watch in the Raptors this season coming up. But Chelsea, how are you? And are you just so happy that the rumor mill keeps on churning?
Hi, yeah, I'm good. I mean, yeah, in terms of the rumor mill, it's just something you get used to, I think.
I think what's really kind of sinking in for me is it was really nice for a little while. Obviously, the last 3 years were a nightmare, just in general. But one of the nice things was like the weird compressed off seasons we got where we didn't get to like stew in rumors for months and months at a time, which it feels like what we've been doing right now. Like we've been just like in that broth for a long, long time thinking about Pascal Siakam, Damian Lillard, on and on and on. Hopefully, media day is like a soft deadline for this stuff, but we should dive in. We are going to get to the players on the Raptors we're most excited to watch coming up later, Chelsea. I'm looking forward to that. But we got to talk off the top about the latest around the league when it comes to scuttlebutt pertaining to the Toronto Raptors. Our pal Matt Moore from Locked On NBA was quoted yesterday on Locked On NBA talking a little about the various mystery teams that might be in the weeds waiting to kind of pounce on this Damian Lillard thing as the Heat continue to not want to give up the full freight package. Their full freight package on its own is not exactly all that amazing for the Blazers either. But the quote from Matt Moore is, "That's the thing nobody's really saying, but everyone around the league kind of knows that the Raptors are amongst the teams that have shown interest in Damian Lillard." Chelsea, we've kind of gone over the various iterations of a Dame trade on this show quite a bit. You know, could they offer up Scotty Barnes? At this point, that maybe feels like bidding against themselves because that would easily be the best offer on the table. So maybe that's not the road you go down. You know, OG Anunoby's name has been thrown around, obviously for salary matching reasons. Maybe Gary Trent Jr. gets involved. And then Kevin Pelton last night on the low post dropped a sort of idea of Pascal Siakam being part of like a 3-teamer where he gets routed to somewhere else, and that's where the assets end up going to Portland for Dame. It's all very interesting. Where are you at with this, Chelsea? Like, what's your general gut feeling? Do you think this is real? Do you think this is just the Heat leveraging the Raptors to get, or the Blazers leveraging the Raptors to get more out of Dame, or out of the Dame trade from Miami? Where are you at with all this?
I mean, I'm not surprised that the Raptors are kind of coming up in these talks. I think it's completely smart to have interest, and I think it's definitely a smart move to kind of pick up the phone and see what the Trailblazers are trying to get. It's just kind of like we were going through the Kevin Durant thing last season. This is this season. Next season, there's going to be another superstar that wants to trade. Like,
Might be
I
two.
feel like, yeah, literally. Like, I feel like this is just going to be the thing of the off season going forward, is that some superstar is going to want some crazy trade. And knowing, how the Raptors operate, they're going to pick up the phone. They're going to try and see what they can offer. And most of the time, it's not going to be enough. And so I think that the interest part is definitely probably true. In terms of if it's going to happen, I don't think so. And I do very much see Miami trying to use Toronto as leverage, because, we know that Toronto and Miami are two teams that do a lot of, business together. And so are Portland and Toronto as well. So they're all very familiar with each other and how they work. And I don't know, maybe these two teams are like, we're not getting fleeced again by this poverty team right now. Like, that's not a thing that's going to happen. So, I'm at a phase right now where I'm like, all right, sure, we're interested, whatever. Like, I don't think it's going to happen. And I also think that, like, Dame's talking all this talk about he's not going to go to training camp if he goes to whatever team, but like, I don't know. It's hard to think if that's actually going to happen, if the Raptors would take that chance. And I'm like, why even take the chance? We're at this phase of this franchise where we just need to, like, get people who actually want to be here. I don't know. It's like you had one of your biggest players leaving free agency. And I'm like, okay, your next move is to get someone who, like, very vocally has said they don't want to be here. Okay, cool. Like, you do you. But just find yourself in the same situation next year if he wants a trade, or literally in February. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation that I'm trying not to put too much thought into, because in the end, I have no control over it. So
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that I had that healthy approach to this type of thing. My brain is addled with trade machine machinations at this point. I think that's just the byproduct of doing a daily podcast where you got to drum up something to talk about. But I think for me, like, I'm not surprised either that they're coming up. They're always going to be kind of this lurking in wait type of team. And I think Dame is kind of the tier of superstar that they're going to kind of be in the conversation for, like imperfect superstars. Pretty good players or very excellent players in most cases, who maybe have like some, trade value diminished for whatever, contract reasons, injury, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they're not going to be the type of team that has all the assets to throw in a potential Giannis trade next summer if that comes to pass, or a Joel Embiid trade if that comes to pass. And so they're probably shopping in this kind of second tier superstar area, and so it makes sense. Like, Dame fits basically every one of the team's biggest needs. He would be pretty awesome on this roster regardless of who ends up going out. I also don't think it's happening, because for me, trading Pascal for him is a little too rich. It leaves the roster behind just like kind of barren, honestly, and really asking for a lot of youth to grow along with Dame, which I don't think Dame's super stoked about, considering his stance on Portland. I think trading Scottie, while I would probably do that just because I'm apparently a ghoul who just thinks every young player is meant to be traded for good players or who are older, while I would probably do that just philosophically, I don't think the Raptors would do that, and I don't think they would even kind of consider considering good English, Sean. Like, baking the fact that they're probably bidding against themselves if they're like, well, what if we just threw Scotty Barnes in here when maybe OG Anunoby is like a commensurate offer to what the Heat are doing, obviously plus picks and et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like, OG's the guy. I if you can make that happen, I'm all for it. Like, a great call. You trade OG, who's got that big pending, UFA status hanging over his head. You pick a direction, you solve one of the problems, you lean into Scottie and Pascal and give them a real running mate to make it all work and tie them together. That would be awesome. I just don't see Portland having the desire to add a pending UFA when they just paid Jeremy Grant $35 million, and they're not going to be very good, and they'll be sitting there probably losing OG in a year's time. So what's in it for them there? So I don't think this is much. I think if it says anything, Chelsea, it's that there's a chance that something still goes down here for the Raptors between now and the start of training camp. Like, I don't think, or the start of the season. Like, the Pascal thing has been weird all summer. And I think it suggests that they're in talks to make something happen, even if it's just as a third team that gets Tyler Hero routed their way. Like, I think something could go down. What's your general feeling on whether something will happen to this roster? And I guess what's your feeling on the necessity of something happening for this roster to maybe make a little bit more sense on the floor?
Yeah, I feel like we're in crunch time now where my belief is that if anything happens right now, it just kind of feels rushed at this point. You had all of this time to, the Atlanta thing came and went. There was a few other possibilities. And I feel like now people just know that the Raptors might be like scrambling, trying to figure out something before the season starts. And if anything happens, it might just be rushed and like not thought out very well. And, you're already thinking about a team that has dealt with some extreme roster changes this summer. You had Fred leave, which was a huge blow to them. And I'm definitely in this mood where I feel like I'm constantly just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, when are we going to hear something? When is something going to happen? And I feel like everyone's in that boat, but I'm kind of leaning towards the side of like, nothing's going to happen. Because we know Masai, we know he's not like a rushed kind of person. He's not gonna act on anything unless maybe he's been doing this the entire offseason. Now is finally the time. But I also just like for some reason don't see that from him. Like, I think if he was gonna do something, it was gonna be really early in free agency or in the offseason, and not when you're about to go to training camp.
Yeah, we're like 12 days away from media day. Like the time's ticking. You don't want to be doing stuff after media day. I think that's got to be kind of a soft deadline. So if something does happen, I imagine it happens between now and October the 2nd. But it's if nothing happens, I hope Masai has some pre-canned answers prepared to talk about the 3 pending UFAs he has on the team going into the season once again, and all of the sort of drama that circles around that. It's a weird situation. We're gonna leave that stuff behind for now. We had to talk about it out of obligation, but we're gonna have some fun turning into the next segment. We're gonna take a look at some players that we are most excited to watch on the Raptors this season. We have our personal lists. We have not yet told each other our lists. It's very exciting. It's all coming up in just a second. Before we do that, however, gotta tell you about Jace Medical. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected, and that is why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing doctor consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASEmedical.com, promo code LOCKEDON. All right, we continue on here. Chelsea Leite of Raptors HQ is along as we turn our attention away from the rumor mill and to the season at hand and the roster that is currently in place for your Toronto Raptors. We're going to do a little exercise here. We have our top 3 lists of the dudes we're most excited or intrigued to watch this season on the Raptors, and we've not yet told each other who we got. So I'm curious, Chelsea, I will put it to you first to reveal your number 1 Toronto Raptor you are most excited to watch this season.
Oh man. I mean, I feel like this one's kind of obvious, but we're at kind of a turning point here. So I'm going to say Scotty Barnes is the one that I'm most top excited to see
That's
this season.
the chalk answer, and I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we're going into Scotty's third. I'm having a brain fart for some reason right now.
Third year.
Third year. Okay, perfect. The time is an illusion, man. But I'm like, I don't know how long it's been. But yeah, his 3rd season, and we had the Rookie of the Year campaign, which was obviously great. Last year, I wouldn't call it a dip, but, it wasn't as...
It was like a stagnation, a plateau, if you will.
A plateau, exactly. And the team did worse, so whatever. And now we're heading into this season where he is definitely going to be expected to do more now that Fred is gone, and he's definitely kind of leaning into being like the quote-unquote face of the franchise. When you think about the fact that a lot of people think Pascal Siakam may be on the way out. Nobody else has really kind of stepped up and like become that, face. And I think that's where he's headed towards. And I do think the Raptors are keeping him pretty close because we've heard some things about trades that haven't gone through because they refused to deal him. So
Yep.
I do think that he is at a point now where he's going to have to step up and be, maybe learn a little bit more how to be a leader. He's still so young too. It's kind of hard to say that, but I'm really hoping that we see a jump both in his like play this season in terms of like his potential. He has so much potential. He's like, we see little flashes of it in his highlights from the past 2 years. But I also just think that he becomes, the kind of guy who can rally the troops together, for a lack of a better term. And just, show that he's turning into that guy who can lead a team. Because, when you draft someone top 4 like that, the hope and the expectation going into like a long career with that team is that they're gonna, step up and be the guy. And so I think he has the potential to be the guy. And I think this is going to be a really pivotal year for him.
Yeah, like year 3 is a massive one. And, we're a year away now from talk of his next contract. Like, it's already coming up on us. And look, I have been pretty skeptical of the idea of just like having him be the point guard. I've made no bones about that on the show. Like, I think it's probably a bad idea to just say, hey, you're the point guard, go lean into it. I don't think it's going to lead to the best results. That said, I think if the Raptors are going to do it, they should just lean into it and have him really kind of go through the growing pains and go through the ups and downs of being the dude who has the ball in his hands. Like, I don't think the ambition for this season is all that high. And so, like, take advantage of a year where you can kind of go test some stuff out and see what Scotty really is and what he's made of. I think, it's going to be fascinating to see how he's used. Yeah, I would imagine, like, again, we've seen him kind of telegraphed as this point guard. Obviously, they bring in Dennis Schroeder. Will he start? Will he not? That's a whole other question. We talked about that last week. If you want to go check it out, everydayers already know that. But if you want to go check that out, you can. I think, for me, like, how do they sprinkle in areas of the game where he's been successful into how he's being deployed, right? Because so far in his career, the times at which he's been the best have been as like a small ball big, essentially. And how does that fit into a team that has Jakob Poeltl on it? How does that fit into a team that has Pascal Siakam in the front court with him and the lack of spacing and shooting that's there? And, how does the rest of the roster complement him too, right? Like, how does, Pascal Siakam's 3-point shooting come along? Does that come along, does he become like a 38% catch and shoot guy in the corners? And does that mean Scottie Barnes has more room to operate and kind of do the thing that he can do best? It's just, there's a lot of really interesting factors at play. I don't think the roster is ultimately all that conducive to what you want Scottie Barnes to really be. Like, I think surrounding him with shooting is probably the move. They don't have that right now. And so they're going to be trying to like make lemonade out of limes, and maybe they can do it. Like, maybe it's doable. Maybe Scotty's just that talented. I think we've seen the flashes, like you talked about. Like, the flashes are absolutely tantalizing, and there's totally a world in which everything clicks this season. And the on-court stuff combined with the locker room stuff and the leadership and kind of taking the team by the horns, it all comes together. And, whether I agree with the philosophy behind it or not, I'm extremely excited to watch it all play out, because he's a really fun player to watch when he's really clicking, and the passing is undeniable. And, he's going to be one way or another an indicator of the team's success this season. What do you think? Let's say everything hits. Like, Scotty comes in. He's, I think the biggest thing is like the shooting touch around the rim and from 2-point range comes back, because that was a massive drop-off area for him last year. Totally cratered efficiency-wise, went to well below league average in terms of true shooting. It was not a very efficient season for him last season. If everything clicks and that comes back maybe towards his sort of rookie levels, we see maybe a little bit of that mid-range jumper coming back into play. We obviously know the passing. I think the defensive strides he made as like an off-ball defender last year are pretty notable. It all kind of comes together. Scottie Barnes is what we hope he can be. What do you think that means for the overall outlook of this team? Like, do you think a Scottie Barnes full-on leap can carry this team to like top 6 in the East? Like, is it that much of a swing piece there, or is the rest of the roster still kind of incomplete and weird to the point that even like a huge Scottie Barnes leap might not necessarily lead to the whole roster kind of coming with him and making this into like a legit playoff team?
I'm torn, because when Scottie Barnes is good, like you just said, like he's, such a factor in every game. I do still think that the one thing the Raptors are missing is like a true point guard, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna like lean into it, I feel bad trying to put everything on Scotty. It's like, okay, you want to be a guy who can finish at the rim because he's very strong there, but you also want his, jumper and his, mid-range to come back. Then you're going to ask him to play make and have the ball in his hands. I'm like, is this too much too
It's
soon?
a lot. Yeah.
It is a lot. And it's like, okay, if he can handle that, then that definitely boosts the Raptors for sure. I'm not confident enough to say like a 6 seed, but I do think that and like say like if Dennis Schroeder were to like, kind of pop off, or like Gary Trent Jr. or whoever, Grady Dick, I don't know, someone's gonna like pop off and like, be able to be that like secondary ball handler so that Scotty Barnes isn't trying to do everything all at once all the time. Then yeah, maybe we can kind of boost up, maybe win a play-in. Which would be an improvement from last season.
As long as you're not playing the Bulls and a certain spectator's not there, they're looking great.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm torn because I definitely see the potential in Scotty. I'm a huge Scotty believer, but I definitely don't want to put all of the hopes of this roster on him because that's unfair. And also, there's certain things you got to think about. Will Pascal Siakam be on this roster? Will OG Anunoby be on this roster? Like, there's certain factors that I think it can click if everybody's kind of running at their best. And I also think that, like, even if Scotty is at his best, like, if someone else, if there's not, better shooting all around him, if, the playmaking isn't there, all that stuff, then I still don't think that they can, like, kind of, but it definitely helps. And I do think that, like, if Scotty is on his, like, he's playing to the best of his capability and so is everybody else on the floor, then I do think that this team is very capable of, like, making the playoffs. But it's definitely, like, what we've seen over the past, like, couple of seasons is that, like, nothing seems to be clicking at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the classic thing too of, the best players are the ones who make the players around them better as well. And like, if we see like a full Scottie leap this season and his playmaking is on point and he's got a little bit more offensive punch to his game, maybe that does end up being the type of thing that elevates others. And you kind of have this rising tides, lift all boats thing kind of centered around Scottie's development. Like, that's on the table as a possibility here as well. Again, I think what's probably more likely is we do see a pretty good Scottie season within the limitations of a, misshapen roster and all the questions that hang over it. But I think that can be a good thing because it gives you clarity on, okay, this dude is the dude. We just got to go find the other dudes to put around the dude, capital D, and we can kind of make this work. I think where it goes wrong is if he just looks out of place, right? He looks totally, not up for the ball handling duties. His handle's not refined. The shooting doesn't come back. The 2-point touch, the push shots are not there. If that all happens, we're probably having a pretty grim conversation in a year's time about, what the contract looks like for him next, what the roster, can you even build a winning roster around him? Big year for Scottie. I think he's a very noble choice to be the most exciting player to watch this season. And also, I think, easily the most important as well. I don't think that's telling tales out of school. We're going to come back to this side, Chelsea, get into our number 2 and 3 most exciting players on the Raptors to watch this season. We will do that momentarily. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sports book in all the land. You can snap into NFL action this season with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action because you can use those bonus bets on things like spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Maybe you're not a football fan. I certainly am not. But if you're a basketball fan, if you're a baseball playoff fan, if you're any kind of sports fan, I have wonderful lines there for you to go check out. Maybe you want to put a lot of money down on a team to win the NBA championship that you have a good feeling about. I did it last year on FanDuel with the Denver Nuggets at like 19-1, and I was laughing all spring long as the Nuggets steamrolled through the playoffs. You can be like me, cackling in your living room while your wife is like, what's going on? In the next room, you can go and do that by visiting FanDuel.com. Enter enter the promo code, go to fanduel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, we are rounding out today's show with Chelsea Leite of Raptors HQ, getting into our second and third most exciting players to watch on the Raptors this season. Chelsea, I'll give you the floor once again. Who is your number 2 behind Scottie Barnes?
This one's a little bit of a wild card, but I mean, with this Raptors roster, I'm gonna go with Gradey Dick. And I know that's,
all right.
Which is a little bit of a wild card, but I don't know, like. He got drafted. There was all that hype. And I do think we've had, I don't know if many of the listeners are big WNBA people, but there was this whole discourse in the WNBA this season about like the vibes player, like the player that's on the roster and they're just good vibes. And it kind of lifts everybody else up. And, you know, maybe they don't get as many minutes and maybe, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, them being on the team just kind of like helps everyone else. And so I do think that like Gradey Dick definitely has a lot of like positive when it comes to his on court stuff, but I also think he's going to be a very important locker room piece if the other like guys are like kind of willing to let that happen. And so, you know, I've seen his highlights. His shooting looks, you know, pretty decent. I mean, there was yesterday, literally, there was that highlight of like Gary Trent Jr. giving him the alley-oop and then him just like fumbling it. So we're going to ignore that. We're going to ignore that highlight. You know, they were just doing runs. It's fine. But I just think that, like, he's a young guy who seems to have a really great personality, and you just kind of want those guys to succeed. And I think I'm excited to see, you know, if he's going to be put in any situation where he's going to maybe be given the time to develop, it might be this one because you're on this roster. Nobody really knows, like, what people's places are. Maybe, you know, Darko just, you know, throws him in there and kind of says, you know, show me what you can do. And he, you know, flourishes a little bit. And I do think like if his shooting is what people are saying it might be, then it's definitely a boost for the Raptors, who very much need someone who can shoot. Maybe he comes off and gives really good bench minutes, which the Raptors definitely needed last season. And so I just think that there's a lot of positive there. And since we've never seen him before, I am definitely excited to see how he fits into this team and if he's someone that we can kind of buy into long term.
I think that's a great choice. I didn't quite have him in my top 3, probably like number 4 though, because he does seem like a fun player to watch. He's also just something new on the Raptors, which is he can shoot. And it's a really nice addition. And I think that shooting is probably going to lead to him actually getting some real run. And I hope we get to see him play with the Raptors' better players as well. Like, I hope he's not kind of stuck in these second units with sort of secondary reserve guys. I hope we get to see him sprinkled in, playing with Scottie Barnes or Jakob Poeltl, working with them in dribble handoff situations, coming around pin downs, flying around, and just using his gravity to create extra space for the better players on the floor. I think that's totally a way the Raptors could use him. I think I'm baking in a little bit of sort of lowered expectations for the defensive end. I just think it's going to take a while for him to just physically mature for the NBA game. But I think he's an interesting athlete. I think the offensive rebounding instincts, the just general knowing where to stand, all of that stuff, like, it's really exciting with him. He's, you know, I know it's like cliche to say he's more than a shooter, but he definitely is. And I think because there is such a dearth of shooting on this roster, there's just going to be opportunity there. Not to mention, he has a coach now in Darko Rajakovic, who everything points to being very developmentally inclined in a way that perhaps the last head coach was not so much. And so I think it's a pretty good circumstance for Dick to kind of, you know, join the team on right now as well. So very good pick. Yeah. My number 2 is Precious Achiuwa, Chelsea. I think Precious... This is a massive season for Precious. I know he's extension eligible right now. I just don't know how, in good conscience, you can go extend him if you're the Raptors at this moment, considering he's been good for roughly 0.5 out of 3 of the seasons he's played in the NBA. That 0.5 season was awesome. It rocked. He was so good, and I'm like fully in for that being the Precious experience, and hopefully he can get back to that. But I don't think you can pay him unless you see a full season of good Precious Achiuwa. And that could very well happen this season. Like there's going to be opportunity. His defense remains incredible. I think he's the second best defender on the team behind OG Anunoby. The bar for his offense is not very high to clear. It's got to be higher than what it was at last year. Am I crazy with this Precious call? I just think there's so much riding on this season, and he's such an interesting, electrifying player when things are going really well that I'm fascinated and excited to see exactly what he can bring to the table this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a big turning point for him as well. And hilarious that you're 0.5 seasons. I'm curious, is it like the 0.5 season before that Philly series? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, basically at the second half of 2021-22 where he was bombing threes at 38% and like pulling up in dudes' eyes. Yeah, it was wonderful. Like, who is this freak player? It's a glorious thing.
And maybe now, and I think we're definitely in this weird phase right now where we can't predict a lot of what the lineups are going to be and what the rotations might be, because we're so used to like the last system where we kind of could predict like
those are the seven guys. Yeah,
exactly. we could predict that, but going into this new season with like an entirely new coaching staff, it's definitely hard to be like, okay, this guy's not going to get as much run, or this is going to do that. Like we just kind of have to wait and see what Darko's system is going to be like. And so I'm excited to see like if this fresh start, I know there's kind of a thing in maybe the media side right now where we're like, oh, it kind of feels like a fresh start. And I'm sure the players are feeling that too. And maybe that's going to boost some of them to be like, okay, like I'm in this new system now, new coaches, new this, new that. And like, I hope that helps Precious, because, when we saw him come from Miami, that's kind of what happened. He kind of flourished and he found his place. And he had, I think it was last season when he had that like 22 rebound game or whatever it was.
Yeah, very early in the year. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to see that too. Like, let's go. So yeah, I definitely agree with this being a very pivotal year for Precious. And I do think that he can do it because we've seen him do it in small flashes. So I'm very high on him as a player. And I really hope that, we see that.
He's like a dude I'm just really rooting for it all to work out for, because he's fun and weird and chaotic. And that's just the best type of dude to watch on a random January night. He can bring so much joy. Chelsea, let's quickly run through our number threes on our list. I'll give it to you. Who's your number three most exciting Raptor to watch this year?
I see this. Exciting is an interesting term for this one, but I'm going to go with Gary Trent Jr.
Okay.
I was very shocked to see him opt in earlier in the off season. And so I think I've always been very high on Gary Trent Jr. from like the second he was traded to Toronto. And I just want to be right. I know
isn't that what we do this for? The whole thing is just, we're trying to be right.
I just want to be right. I don't know. And so I'm like, he's someone that we've seen those flashes of where like, okay, like this guy is good. He's very clutch. He makes crazy shots. He's very like intriguing to watch. The consistency isn't always there, which I think is something that he needs to improve on. And I also think that it's an important time for him because he's getting to that age of like 25-ish years old where like, it's like, okay, you were good when you were young. You've shown some potential. Now is the time to like prove that you can stay in the NBA long term. And so, and I do think that he can. And I do think that, it's probably smart for him to take that opt-in and to have another year to kind of prove himself before he's out in the market trying to like get more money. And I just think that he's capable of so much more consistency than he's shown in the past like season. Again, he's one of those guys where that 0.5 season that he came in was traded was so good because again, it was Tampa and like there was nothing to lose. And so he was just kind of like going off. But
there's going to be like a book written on the last 2 months of that season where like Freddie Gillespie and Kem Birch were like the big men of the future. And Malachi Flynn was winning Rookie of the Month. What a bizarro world we were in then.
Oh, that was so weird. Ooh, it's like a fever dream almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, maybe we can see that Gary Trent Jr. that we've seen flashes of come back. And I do think that maybe now might be the time because, there's not as many, not that he was like fighting with Fred for minutes or anything, and I'm not sure if he's going to come off the bench or be in the starting lineup, but I just think that it's the same thing with all of these guys who are kind of up for contracts or getting to those times in their careers where we have to see something from him. And is it going to be, okay, we're going to invest in this guy next season when maybe some other people walk away? Or is he someone that you're just like, okay, like it was a good time. Thanks for chilling. And then he just moves on. Like, I don't know. And so I still haven't made up my mind personally on what I want Gary Trent Jr.'s future with the Raptors to be, but I've been so vested in his journey and like have really liked him as a player. You know, when he's been really good. And so again, I just want to be right. And I hope that, you know, we need a shooter. So if he can just kind of get better than last season and kind of get back to that, like, you know, that stretch that he had where we were all like, okay, yeah, that guy, like he's the guy, then I will be very pleased.
Yeah, I think like the opportunity is going to be there. You know, 9 threes a game went out the door with Fred VanVleet. Those are going to have to be taken by somebody, and I would assume Gary Trent Jr. is going to get a large portion of that redistribution of threes. You know, can he hit them? We'll see. I think my bigger question with him is defense. Like he was really used by Nick Nurse as like an agent of chaos, and hey, go jump passing lanes and gamble. Like that's what you're going to do. How will that hold up in what presumably going to be like a more conservative defensive scheme? Is he going to get the chance to kind of jump those passing lanes and cause that chaos? And if he doesn't, does he offer much as an on-ball defender? That's going to be a pretty big telling thing for him as well. Quickly, speaking of wanting to be right, my number 3 is Christian Koloko because I'm convinced he's good. I really want him to be good, and I'm really excited to watch him maybe get some regular backup center minutes this season. I think playing with like Dennis Schroeder in second units could be pretty fun with him. You know, I think the hands got to come a long way as far as finishing around the basket, but the rim protection is super undeniable. He had the best on-off differential for defense on the team last year. When he was on the floor, they were basically the best defense in basketball, and it was really fun to watch. And so can he add a little more offensive punch to his game? That's one I'm really excited to watch as well, but we don't need to spend too long on Christian Koloko. I just wanted to get that one in here as we were running long, but we got to bring this one to an end. Chelsea, this was lovely. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll get you back on, of course, during the season as well. Where can people check out all your great work?
Yeah, well, you can check me out at Chelsea Leite on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And you can also check out Raptors HQ. So that's fun. I love plugging my little website. So it's not very little, I guess. I shouldn't call it a little website.
Big.
But
it's big.
It's big. I mean, it's my little big website.
Yeah, it's bigger and better since I left. That's for damn sure.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, you know, I'm just, you know, we're trying to mix it up over there. So I'm excited. We got a good team this year. So check us out.
I guess like it's like my blogging alma mater. Like, love me some Raptors HQ. Always rooting for you guys over there, and you guys are doing amazing work. Chelsea's going to be in the building covering the team all season long as well. So be sure to check out all Chelsea's awesome work. We'll leave it there though. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can follow the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course we are on YouTube and all the podcast apps for free each and every day. Please support the show. Would love that very, very much. And you can also join our Discord server. Link is in the description. Please come and hang out. Unsure what we're going to talk about on tomorrow's show just yet. We're working on a couple of ideas, but if you want to go check out an episode or two of the show, did a mailbag yesterday. We talked about the Raptors draft pick for 2024, among other things, and we also talked on Monday about the whole Pascal, the Hawks, Bogdan Bogdanovic, all that stuff. You can go listen to that episode with Vivek. And with that, we will leave you there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you on Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.